भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्तन्निवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुविद्यविधीयते। सदाशिवसमारम्भाम् शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। कर्तुराज्ञया प्राप्यते फलम् कर्म किं परं कर्म तज्जडम् कृतिमहो दधौ पतनकारणम् फलं शाश्वतं गतिनिरोधकम् ईश्वरार्पितं निश्चया कृतम् चित्तशोधकं मुक्तिसाधकम् ईश्वरार्पितं न इच्छया कृतम्। An action, na ichchaya kritam, not performed out of a self-centered desire. A desire will be there behind every action. But when Ramana Maharshi says, na ichchaya kritam, not perform with desire, meaning not perform with self-centered desire, or not perform with the desire of fulfilling one's personal agenda, meaning not perform with the consideration of a personal reward. Then what do you desire? Ishwararpitam. May the Lord be pleased by this action. So Lord Krishna says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam vismara yudhyacha. Hey Arjuna, at all the times, while performing a duty, at all times remember me. Tat kurushva madarpanam. Whatever action you perform, be performed with the spirit of offering to me. So this is the karma yogi, is necessarily a bhakta or a devotee of the Lord. Because only when the action is performed as an offering to the Lord, does it become yoga. So call it karma yogi, call it bhakti of the devotion. Devotion characterized by offering to the Lord. Devotion characterized by remembering the Lord. Devotion characterized by surrender to the Lord. So here the devotee surrenders to Lord in this sense that whatever outcome is there of an action, he gracefully accepts it without any rejection or even resistance. Outcome may be judged as favorable or unfavorable. But the Karma Yogi does not brand an outcome as favorable or unfavorable. He always looks upon that as a grace of Ishvara, blessing of Ishvara. If the outcome is what is normally called favorable, it is the open blessing of Ishvara. If the outcome is what we call unfavorable, it is a blessing, but blessing in disguise. But for a devotee, what comes is not important. Where it comes from is important. And it all comes from Ishvara because he is the karma phaladata, he is the dispenser of the results of our actions. It's a beautiful attitude. That what is created by Ishvara. In fact, it is manifestation of Ishvara. And Ishvara being a benevolent Ishvara Lord, whatever he gives me is always for my well-being. Whether I see my well-being in it or not, I give the benefit of doubt to Ishvara. That in what appears to be an unpleasant or an unfavorable outcome also, some blessing is involved. This is the trust that a devotee has in Ishvara. So it involves faith in Ishvara, surrender or devotion to Ishvara. In our Swamiji's words, bringing Ishvara into our life. Swamiji's formula was more of Ishvara, less of I. So how does more of Ishvara come? When you bring Ishvara into our life in this manner, as benevolent, as the one who blesses one. So this slowly and slowly removes the tendency to resist, the tendency to react. I resist something that I do not like, something that I consider unfavorable. I resist or even reject. A bhakta or devotee does not reject anything because whatever is Ishvara, and therefore he gracefully accepts whatever comes. So tendency to resist, tendency to reject slowly goes away, tendency to gracefully accept comes. God, give me serenity to gracefully accept what I cannot change. Accepts Ishvara in his life. And therefore that ego, so the one that resists or one that rejects is the ego. And we give less and less importance to ego by graceful acceptance. So less of ego. More of Ishvara, less of ego. Chitta Shodhakam. In this manner, Shodhanam or purification of mind takes place. What is purification of mind? Mind is accepting, gracefully accepting, which is comfortable with what is. Being comfortable with what is. Even better than that, being satisfied with what is, being happy with what is, that's what we ultimately want. A wise person is the one who is happy with what is. Because what is Ishvara? What is happiness? If I see that fact, then there will be happiness with what is. Right now, what is does not make me happy. If what is conforms to my expectations or likes and dislikes, then only it makes me happy. So a transformation takes place in me that I derive happiness from what is rather than expecting or demanding that it should be in a certain way. That's how the tuning of Ishvara comes. So first stage is tuning of Ishvara, second stage is knowing Ishvara. So now when we are told that the action is to be offered to Ishvara, what is action? So Ramana Maharshi explains how actions are performed at 3 levels. That is in the 4th verse. Kaya Vangmana Kayamuttamam Pujanam Japas Chintanam Krama. Inasmuch as an action is performed in the spirit of worship to Ishvara, that spirit of worship can be expressed at 3 levels. Kaya Vang Manah Kayam Ka. So Kaya Vang Manah, Kaya means the body, Vag means the speech, and Manah means the mind. We perform actions at 3 levels, at the level of the body, level of speech, level of mind, and all these actions can be performed as an offering to the Lord. So what is that action called when it is performed in the spirit of offering or worship? Pujanam japas chintanam krama. Meaning the action performed at the level of body in the spirit of worship is pujanam, puja, or act of adoration. When action is performed at the level of speech, it becomes worship. So it is japa, it is repeating the name of the Lord, or chanting. Chanting is glories, chanting is praise. And manah, at the level of mind, is called chintanam, or meditation. Thus, worship of Ishvara, Lord, can be performed at 3 levels: body, speech, and mind. So, act of worship performed at the level of the body. By body, I mean the limbs, basically. Is called pujanam. Puja. Puja is an act of adoration. Japa, the act of chanting or recital. And chintanam, mental act of meditation or mental worship. So krama, uttamam. Ramana Maharshi says that each following one is better than the preceding one. Meaning that the pujanam, the worship performed at the level of the body, prepares me for japa. The worship at the level of speech prepares me for chintanam, the worship at the level of mind. Meaning that each following requires more attention and concentration than each preceding one. Pujanam is the act of worship that we see in our temples and at our home, which involves various steps of making offering. So typically, pujanam or that worship at the physical level is like you may express your reverence or adoration to someone who is a reverential one. The first steps are there. You meditate, you think of him, you invite him, give him a seat, wash his feet, give him a bath, garments, ornaments. So this is one way. This is called the worshipping the image of the Lord. It all depends upon one's culture, depends upon one's disposition, depends upon one's choice. But the tradition which Ramana Maharshi comes, is worshipping Ishvara in the form of images, meaning they worship Ishvara as image. It was very prevalent in India also. It's called the Murti Puja, or worshipping Ishvara in a Murti, or an image. And you treat him as though he is a conscious being, and as a revered conscious person, how you will adore, and so also you adore that. So puja. Japa is when you recite his name or chant a hymn. And Chintanam when you worship at the level of mind. So again, in the following verses, Lord Krishna explains each one. Pujanam, worshipping the level of body; Japa, the level of speech; Chintanam, at the level of the mind. So read the next verse, 5th verse. Jagat Ishadhi Yukta Sevanam Ashtamurti Deva Pujanam So here Ramana Maharshi says that what we call Jagat or the creation is manifestation of Ishvara. That we say. But here that manifestation can be looked upon as a specific manifestation. That Ishvara manifests as 8 forms. In 8 forms the Ishvara manifests. So what we call Jagat or universe is the 8 form manifestation of Ishvara. What are the 8 forms? Look at translation. The 5 elements: space, air, fire, water, earth. These are the manifestations. Ishvara manifests as space, as air, as fire, element space, element air, element fire, element water, element earth. Then as sun, as moon, and as the conscious being who is performing the worship. So that includes the whole universe. This is 8-fold manifestation of Ishvara. So says Ramana Maharshi, what is pujanam? What is worshipping Ishvara? Worship the universe, which is the 8-fold manifestation of Ishvara anyway. So worshipping Jagat, worshipping universe is worshipping Ishvara. Meaning whatever universe is there in front of you. What is universe? What I confront at a given moment. So whatever I confront or come across at a given moment is the manifestation of Ishvara. All the 8-fold forms. The 8-fold Ishvara is manifested in this. And therefore, whatever you do in this spirit of worship. As the Swami would say, be a contributor rather than a consumer. So look upon Jagat or the world not as a place to be exploited, not as a place which you look upon as a place of enjoyment or pleasure. We look upon that as a place of worship. Every action that you perform is looked upon as an opportunity to worship Ishvara in the form of Jagat that is in front of you. Because the indwelling self of all is the self of all. Indwelling self of all. Only thing that differentiates one from the other is the costume. But then in all the various costumes, it is one Ishvara who is manifest. Never look upon anybody as an object of worship. Self in that one is Ishvara. Therefore, we need not go someplace specifically for worshipping Ishvara. You worship what is in front of you. It's the spirit. Difficult, Swamiji, to see Ishvara in this fellow. Then you go to temple also. Nothing wrong. Since we have difficulty in seeing Ishvara in all these names and forms, what happens is these names and forms of the world keeps on pushing my buttons. That's the problem. It's not easy to, even if I want to do something for the world, that doesn't allow me because they push my buttons. Raga and dvesha, attachment and aversion. Therefore it becomes rather difficult to maintain the spirit of worship while interacting with the world, particularly the world of human beings. Our most difficulty is with the world of human beings. The mountains don't push any buttons. The rivers and lakes don't push any buttons. The trees don't push any buttons. Animals don't push any buttons. Creatures don't put any buttons. Only fellows who push buttons are human beings. And closer they are to me, more buttons they push. So, in worshipping Ishvara in the form of Jagat requires a much greater control over the self than worshipping Ishvara in the form of an image, because that one does not react. Image of Lord Krishna is there in front of you, always smiling. When you offer food which you have forgotten salt, you won't, you will not object to it, you will not complain. He does not complain, doesn't push any buttons, always smiles, accepts you as you are. Therefore, in an altar of worship, one advantage is it's a non-reacting form of the Lord. And you feel therefore accepted as you are. In my usual interaction in the world, I always pretend to be different from what I am. There's always facade. I rarely show myself as I truly am. Because I want to be pleased. I want to be accepted by you. I don't want to reject me. There was some facade is always there. My face is smiling and I'm welcoming. I hope that's, but what is outside is not always inside. When I'm at an altar, since I know that I'm accepted as I am, I need not pretend and I can be as I am there. So that pujanam has some advantages. So either you worship in a small puja room or worship in a large puja room. Then Ishvara is in that particular form and image, Ishvara is in and manifest as a whole universe. So pujanam, meaning adoring Ishvara by your actions performed at the physical level, with your hands and legs and limbs. The next comes the worship Ishvara at the level of speech. The next verse is Chittajam japa dhyanamuttamam. Again, the recital at the level of speech can be at three levels. Uchcha mandataha chittajam. Japa, or repeating the name of the Lord, or even reciting one of his prayers, reciting one of the hymns. So that can be also at three levels. Either you do it loudly, so everybody can hear. That's one way. Om Namah Shivaya, so you also hear, others also hear. Secondly, one is that you then make the sound only just like a murmur. I alone can hear, others cannot hear. And thirdly, I can do the same thing in my mind. So repeating the name of Ishvara is called japa. Or reciting a prayer, or reciting a hymn. And there are many of them, plenty of them, your choice. You like Rudram? Okay. Vishnu Sahasranama? Alright. So many things are there. Or simple Om Namah Shivaya, simple Om also. Then also reciting loudly is easier, meaning requires less concentration. Then reciting a name, murmuring, such that you alone can hear, requires more concentration. Because when you recite with a loud voice, the same words come back to you. So you are the one who is chanting as well as listening. It's easier to focus the mind on that. When on the other hand, when you recite just like murmur, then that loudness of voice is not there, you require more concentration. And finally, when you recite it mentally, it requires even more concentration. In fact, when you recite that mantra, anything, Om Namah Shivaya, Om, any mantra, when you do it mentally, it is called dhyana, meditation. Japat dhyana. Therefore, a very good form of meditation is to mentally repeat the name of the Lord or mentally repeat the mantra of the Lord. So, Om Namah Shivaya, you can call it name, you can call it mantra. Ram, 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 Ram is name. Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram is a mantra. Shiva, 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 Shiva is a name. Om Namah Shivaya is a formula mantra. Where it says, I offer my salutations to Lord. So there's many names are there, many formulas are there, many mantras are there, it's your choice. Or you can also seek that from your Guru. So it starts loudly, slowly becomes just murmuring, and then culminates into the mental recitation, which is called the Japat Dhyanam, meditation in the form of japa. So this is the second level of worship. Little more requiring a more concentration of mind than the previous one, which was the pujana. And then the next verse describes the meditation. Ajyadharaya srotasa samam sarvachintanam viduratah param. So what is meditation? Meditation is maintaining a flow of the same kind of thought. Maintaining a flow of the same kind of thought. For example, if you have chosen this formula Om Namah Shivaya, then what is meditation? Mentally Om Namah Shivaya. The thought of the form of Om Namah Shivaya. Second one, Om Namah Shivaya. Third one, Om Namah Shivaya. So you are maintaining a flow of the same thought. It's called Sajagya Vritti Pravaha. The flow of the same thought of the same kind, of which the focus is Ishvara. So that alone we will call meditation, which is centered upon Ishvara. So you recite a name of Ishvara, recite a mantra of Ishvara. Mental recite, and we recite for a period of time, that the same thought is maintained in your mind. That will be called dhyanam or meditation. Here Ramana Maharshi says that flow of thought can be like ajyadharaya. like the flow of the ghee when it is poured. You know, ghee is clarified butter. When you pour it from one vessel to the other, how unbroken flow is that? In Yoga Shastra, they give the example of oil. Here Ramana Maharshi changes to ghee. Only because this ghee or clarified butter is something that is offered to devatas. And that way it has the association of some sanctity with it. Therefore, Ramana Maharshi uses the example of ghee, ajyatharaya, like the flow of unbroken flow of the ghee. Srotasa samam, or it is like unbroken flow of a river. Meaning that the flow of thoughts in your mind should be like the unbroken flow of a stream of ghee or oil, or an unbroken flow of water as in a river. Why are two examples given? Because in unbroken flow of ghee or oil, an effort is required because you pour the oil from one vessel to the other. But it is unbroken. In case of river, it's like fits and starts, but then it is effortless. So as far as the flow of water in river is concerned, it is effortless. As far as flow of oil is concerned, it is unbroken. So ideally, an effortless, unbroken flow of thought, that would be the ideal meditation. So Ramana Maharshi says that you should continue a practice of mental chanting, of mental worship, until you gain a stage when that chanting takes place on its own and it is uninterrupted by any other thought. When we meditate, lots of interruptions come. Other kinds of thoughts come and interrupt our meditation. Because a long practice. Also, when we recite, we have to make an effort to recite. When we stop making effort, the recital also stops. But then, the reciting to such an extent that it keeps on going by itself. Like the flow of river that goes by itself, so also the flow of that mantra goes on by itself. And uninterrupted by another kind of thought, so it is an uninterrupted, effortless flow of the thoughts of the mind. That is the ideal meditation. It's ideal mental worship of Ishvara. Sarla Chintanam Viradbhaktaram. Meaning unbroken thought is superior to a broken thought. You start with a broken thought in fits and starts, and after long practice, it culminates into an unbroken thought. So that's how the meditation is explained. Now when you are meditating, there is the meditator and there is the object of meditation. As you say, meditation is in the form of mental worship. Therefore in meditation also, there is a devotee who worships and there is Ishvara who is worshipped. So in meditation also, the duality of the worshipper and worshipped, the meditator and what is meditated upon, that duality remains. However, there also, Ramana Maharshi says that when you meditate, what sort of an attitude should you have? That is explained in the next verse. Veda bhavanat sohamityasau bhavana bhida pavani mata. So when you worship, when you recite this prayer, when you meditate, what should be the attitude? There can be two attitudes. One attitude is, the Lord whom I am meditating upon is different from me who is a meditator. One attitude. I am a devotee and he is the Lord. I am different and he is different. Thus, with the attitude of duality, we can worship. All the worship starts that way. Ramana Maharshi says that rather than worshipping with the attitude of duality, we worship or meditate with the attitude of non-duality, Soham, he I am. Meaning that then your meditation will culminate into knowledge of non-duality. So meditation leads to knowledge. If meditation is performed with the attitude of non-duality, then it will result into the knowledge of non-duality. In meditation, you retain that duality, then it cannot lead to the knowledge of non-duality. That's what Ramana Maharshi prescribes here. Even when you worship, you meditate, have the attitude of non-duality. That's Soham, that Ishvara, I am. Even though I am feeling the duality. Right now, Swamiji, there are two kinds of questions. On one hand, you say, you are Brahman. I am Brahman. On the other hand, you say, you worship Brahman or Ishvara. So who is worshipping whom? Where is the question of worshipping when it comes to non-duality? Where is the question? Worshipping always involves a duality between the worshipper and worshipped. So Swamiji, you are prescribing meditation that involves duality. Whereas in reality there is no duality. So here we presently start from where we are. What is my perception of myself? Right now my perception of myself is that I am a limited being, that I am a devotee. My perception of Lord is that He is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. I am little knowledge, limited in every way. He is unlimited in every way. So that is my present perception. So begin from there. And never, even though it involves duality, ultimately that worship in duality will help you to grow out of duality. Because worshipping, although involves duality, but that is conducting ourselves in such a manner that we ultimately grow out of duality. All these means of sadhana are like the gold pole, like a wall pole, which you take its help, lift yourself to the height of 5 feet or 6 feet, whatever champion you are, drop the pole and then cross the barrier. Similarly, all worship is like that. It starts with duality and slowly the duality becomes less and less intense and brings you to a point where you can let go the duality and know the non-duality. Therefore, all worship involves duality. However, the very spirit of worship is such that the duality slowly and slowly becomes less and less intense. It becomes subtler and subtler up to a point when you can drop that duality. So worship brings you to a point where you can drop it, and knowledge enables you to drop it ultimately. But there also, Ramana Maharshi says it is desirable. When you meditate upon the Lord, that I am not separate from the Lord. So Om Namah Shivaya, that's I am not separate from Shiva. In that manner, it is that attitude, not knowledge, attitude of non-duality is much better than the attitude of duality. What's non-duality? Soham, that I am, Ishvara I am. So this meditation, where does it lead you to? The next one says, भाव शून्य सद्भाव सुस्थिति भावना बलात् भक्तिरुत्तमा भाव शून्य सद्भाव सुस्थिति भावना बलात्. So thus when you retain in your mind this attitude of non-duality, bhavana balat, because of that momentum of the attitude of non-duality, ultimately a point comes when the duality drops and you abide in your own self. So bhava shunya sadbhava susthiti. Bhava shunya, devoid of the duality. Sadbhava susthiti. Sadbhava means attaining your own self. Susthiti, abidance in your own self. So the devotion culminates into abidance in my own self, which abidance is the result of the momentum of the meditation with the attitude of non-duality. Meaning that in the beginning or for a long time it requires efforts. Ultimately it results into an effortless meditation. So meditation in terms of retaining a flow of thought always begins with effort. Bhavana bala, on account of the momentum that you attain by practicing that meditation repeatedly and for a long time, a time comes that the mind becomes, or mind stays in the non-duality without any effort. Bhakti Uttama. So this is Uttama Bhakti, this is the most exalted devotion. And therefore, so this is Bhakti Uttama. Uttama Bhakti. The most exalted devotion is abiding in one's own self. So this Vedantin fellow always brings you back to this. That the bhakti or the devotion or the worship that starts with duality ultimately culminates into the non-duality. Abiding in one's own self. Meaning Ishvara as one's own self. And just concluding this topic of bhakti, in the 10th verse we are told, Hruthale mana swasthata kriya Bhakti yoga bodhascha nischidam Hruthale manaswasthata. Manaswasthata, an abiding of the mind. You see that the word meanings are given there. Swasthata. Swa means one's own self. Swasthata meaning remaining in one's own self. Manaswasthata, when the mind remains in its own self. So abiding of the mind in one's own self. Prusthale, abidance of the mind in heart, or abiding of the mind in one's own self, is the ultimate goal of bhakti. So Ramana Maharshi says that bhakti of the devotion normally is understood as identifying with my Ishtadevata or the chosen deity. The chosen deity and I are different, ultimately the difference goes away and I become one with that. So what is the basic desire or principle of devotion? Devotion is identification, love. And love means identification. So worshipping or thinking of Ishvara with love is bringing about an identification. So understanding Karma Yoga also is worship there. Then also there is I'm seeking identification of Lord. By de-identify with the ego. And that process becomes much more enhanced at the level of the mind when I meditate upon Ishvara. Identification with my deity. So either you identify with your God who is different from you, or identify with the God who is your own self. Prusthale, endeavor, your own self which abides in your heart, the mind ultimately abiding in the self which abides in the heart is the culmination of bhakti. Meaning that bhakti of the devotion also is that which culminates into non-duality. Not devotion culminating into duality, which is also an exalted devotion. It's not easy to be identified with Devata, but ideal devotion is when it culminates into the abidance in Ishvara as your own self. Kriya Bhakti Yoga Bodhasya Nishchitam, that Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, that Ashtanga Yoga, and the Buddha knowledge, all of these are meant ultimately for you to abide in yourself. So that is the goal of all of this, is abiding of the mind in the heart, or abiding yourself in the mind in the self, or abiding in yourself, in the self. So Kriya, Bhakti, Yoga and Bodha. Kriya, Karma Yoga. We spoke about that. Bhakti, devotion. We just completed about that. Now what is that? Ashtanga Yoga. Yoga of 8 limbs. Ramana Maharshi very briefly explains that. Doesn't explain all the 8 limbs. One limb he explains. That's called pranayama or control of the breath. Now, pranayama means stopping the breath. Ayama is stopping it. So ultimately yogi wants to stop his breath. By stopping the breath, he seeks to stop his mind. So controlling breath is controlling the mind. Slowing down the breath is slowing down the mind. And stopping the breath is stopping the mind. This is general formula, which is what Ramana Maharshi explains in the next verse, verse 11. Vayurodhana liyate manah Jala pakshiva drodha sadhanam So a bird which is flying, how do you catch that bird? A flying bird, how do you catch? With a net. So mind is like the flying bird, you can't catch it. Just as it is not possible for us to catch a flying bird, similarly also it is not possible, very difficult to catch our mind. So there must be a net. What's a net? That prana. The breath becomes a net with which you catch your mind. It says, Vayurodhana liyate manah. Rodhanam means controlling or stopping. So when the breath is stopped, liyate manah, the mind also stops. It stops. Mind also gets absorbed. That means absorption. So when the breath is controlled, the mind also gains absorption, gains samadhi. What is absorption? Called samadhi. So mind also becomes absorbed. Mind also gets merged. That means merged when the breath is controlled. So jal pakshivat rodha sadhanam. So controlling the breath becomes the means of controlling the mind, just as a net becomes the means of controlling or catching a bird. Just as a net is the means of catching the bird, so also controlling the breath becomes the means of controlling the mind. So they start from gross to the subtle. Start with body, start with asana, then go to prana, so then go to the breath, then go to the mind. So that's how the process takes place in yoga. The process of controlling the mind begins by first controlling our behavior. Even before controlling the body, controlling the behavior, code of conduct. So yama, what we should not do, and niyama, what we should do. So do not do what is not right thing to do, and do what is right to do. So yama tells us what we should not do. No violence, no falsehood, no stealing, no indulgence, no hoarding, and shaucha, santosha, tava. Purification of the body, purification of the mind, contentment, austerity, study of the scripture, repeating Lord's name, and offering your actions to the Lord. That's what we should do. This is called niyama. Then we prepare for the asana, controlling the body. Then next step is pranayama, controlling the mind. So very beautiful progression is there. The 8 steps is a beautiful progression. Starting from the living day-to-day life, ultimately attaining a state where the mind becomes enlightened, when it gets the knowledge of the self. That's how the yoga prescribes 8 steps. Of that, Ramana Maharshi, just as a sample, he only takes one step, namely pranayama or controlling the breath, but he stands for all the other things also. But perhaps we can start with pranayama because it is easier to control prana. So, Vayurodhana liyate mana, not easy. Pranayama is not easy at all, but so controlling the breath and stopping the breath ultimately. So control, because slower and slower and slower and slower and slower and slower. To the point that ultimately breathing also stops. Along with breath, mind also becomes slower and slower and slower and slower. And mind also rests completely. Theoretically, this is the process. And so, how do you say that the breath can control the mind? So Ramana Maharshi gives an explanation of why breath control can result in the mind control. What's the reason? The next verse explains that. Doesn't have to say that, but he says it anyway. Chittavayavas chikriyayutaha Shakhayodvayi Shakti Mulaka. Says Ramana Maharshi that we have twofold power. The power to act and power to think. With mind, power to think. And with the vital air of the breath, power to act. So Kriya Shakti and Ichha Shakti. Kriya Shakti is the power to act, and second is, at the level of mind, the power to think. So both are the Shaktis of powers. Both of them are a branch. The basic power is primordial power, that is called Prakriti or Maya, from which these two branches come. One is the power to act, other is the power to think. So says, just as when these two branches originate from one point, then when you lower one branch, the other branch also gets lowered automatically because they are connected at the root. If the two branches are connected at the source, then by controlling or lowering one branch, the other branch also gets lowered. So this prana, which is the power to act, and mind, which is power to think, Shakti, so both of them have the same source. Shakti Mulaka, one power alone, is the source of both of this, and therefore the power to act, pranayama, being one branch, by controlling that, you are able to control the other branch, namely the power to think. So when the mind, now Ramana Maharshi says that there are two states of the mind. Mind is stopped, all right, but then stoppage of mind can be of two kinds. One where the mind is only merged, other is the mind that is enlightened. So the next verse tells us that Laya vinashane ubhairodhane Laya gatam punar bhavati nomrutam. So mind has two states. One is laya, when the mind is merged. As in deep sleep, the mind is merged. Although in case of yoga, in deep sleep the mind merges in tamas. In here, the mind merges in sattva. So that's a big difference. So mind can merge in sattva. What is meant by a merger? Just as in deep sleep the mind is merged, but then it wakes up again. So if you reach a state of mind where mind is merged, then it can again arise. Same mind will wake up again. But if the mind is destroyed, then the mind will not arise. This Yoga Shastra talks about these two minds. One is the laya or the merger of the mind, other is mano nasha, the destruction of the mind. That's a technical word. The destruction does not mean that the mind is destroyed as a faculty. Yogis have destroyed their mind does not mean that the mind is destroyed as a faculty. But anything that makes the mind distracted from the self, that is all destroyed. Meaning all the raga dveshas are gone. All extrovertedness of the mind is gone. The mind abides totally, effortlessly in its own self. This is called the destruction of the mind. Meaning destruction of the ignorant mind or destruction of the distracting mind. So this is the state we want. Not that the mind should just sleep. Mind should keep awake, all right. At the same time, it is as good as sleeping. Meaning that it does not have any activity at all, doesn't offer any resistance at all. So how do you get these two states? The next verse is Prana bandhana leena manasam Eka chintana nashametyada. Yoga Shastra describes all of this in great detail and gives you methods of accomplishing what they call manonasha or distraction of mind. But Ramana Maharshi has his own method. So says by pranayama, pranabandhana, by pranayama the mind will attain a state of samadhi, meaning the mind gets resolved or mind gets merged. But that mind will again awake to ignorance. Therefore it should become the enlightened mind. Eka chintana. So when the mind has resolved completely, then may you engage that mind in the contemplation upon one or non-dual. So when the mind is completely resolved, completely tranquil, in that mind then you initiate this, that Soham, I am that, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Eka chintana. Chintanam or contemplation upon the one or the non-dual. That way the mind becomes enlightened. And therefore the ignorance also is removed. Meaning the mind remains as a faculty but no more an ignorant faculty. Meaning that samadhi itself does not remove ignorance. If the mind that has attained that samadhi or resolving is subjected to ekachintanam or the contemplation upon one, when that false duality is resolved, and then the mind is what we call the awakened mind or mind that is destroyed, the ignorance mind is destroyed, awakened mind. And so now the yogi has an awakened mind. How is he? The 15th verse tells us that. Nashtamanasotkrushtayoginah Krityamastikam swasthitim yatah. Thus for this yogi, whose enlightened mind abides in his own self, he recognizes himself as what? He recognizes one non-dual, meaning yogi recognizes himself as a full and complete being, and therefore nothing remains to be done. Krityamastikam, does anything now remain to be done? Nothing remains to be done. Swasthitim yatah, because he has attained his own natural state. So mind, because of ignorance, was in an unnatural state. When ignorance is removed, superimposition also is removed, then the mind naturally abides, happily abides in its own self. And that is what we call the freedom of the liberation, where nothing remains to be done. Which is what the 16th verse says. What is it that the yogi realizes or sees? What's the nature of his knowledge? Drishyavaritam chitramatmanah Chitvadarshanam tattvadarsanam. So Ramana Maharshi says, the mind no more remains as a separate entity. Understand that. Mind also is nothing but the manifestation of consciousness. Consciousness alone manifests as a mind. So when the mind is completely resolved or enlightened, then the mind no more remains as an entity separate from consciousness. What remains is consciousness. Meaning the mind reduces itself to consciousness. The example is given. Just as the example of a salt doll, That's also what they give in Yoga Shastra. A salt doll plunges into ocean. It dives into the ocean. Imagine a salt doll diving into the ocean. What will happen to that? becomes one with the ocean. In fact, it was nothing but ocean. Ocean, when it comes in contact with light and earth, and it becomes like a salt, like a salt, a lump of salt. A lump of salt also in reality is nothing but ocean. So a lump of salt plunges into ocean. It attains its own true nature, which was always ocean. Even a salt also is ocean, but does not know. Now it remains one with external. So the mind of a yogi also is like that salt, the lump of salt. It then plunges into its own true nature, its conscious endeavor. It no more remains as an entity separate from the consciousness. Chitva-darshanam. He sees himself as Chit or the consciousness. Tattva-darshanam. And that alone is the truth of himself. Seeing oneself as consciousness, he is seeing the truth of oneself. Because consciousness is our nature. All of this will come, don't worry, when we take the next section of the knowledge. But here we are summarizing the earlier verses. So karma is dealt with, bhakti also is taken care of, and yoga also is taken care of. Now comes the section dealing with jnanam or knowledge. That will take up in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.